Mr. Michael Feeley uh, is a guest of mine today on a Raw Talk session. Michael is Britain's answer to the Da Vinci Code. That is how I can describe your work. And he is renowned globally for decoding symbols and knows everything from Masonic, Freemasonry stuff right through to esoteric Egyptian. Michael Feeley, welcome to my Raw Talk session.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure, really is.
Where do we start, Michael? Because me and you, shall we hit it off and tell everybody how we met? Because it's kind of bizarre.
It really is kind of bizarre, and my awakening is relevant, and my upbringing is relevant. So yeah, please do. And it was a surprise to me when we spoke a few days ago as well.
An absolute surprise. As everybody knows, I interview people all over the globe, from here right the way around to Australia. And somebody had put Michael in my path, and he was already a friend of mine on my list, had been there for many years, I expect. And I was introduced, and I introduced myself to you about a week and a half ago, I think it was. And we met up on Skype and began to have a conversation. The conversation quickly turned to, we have the same accent. We're from the same neck of the woods. We knew that we were Midlanders and hit it off like that. And the next thing I know, I'm asking you where you're from. You're asking me where I'm from. Can you believe, guys, that we have grown up a street apart? I'm not joking. This is beyond bizarre. Not only did we go to the same school, we had the same education, we played on the same parks, we knew the same people, but never ever met until now. It freaked me out a little bit, I must say, Michael. How did you feel after all that?
As I said, the astonishing thing was, and during that conversation we had, there was quite a few interesting, deep topics that we discussed that we both are interested in. But the thing that struck me the most was the fact that if I walk out of my old, where my mum still lives, and turn right and just follow the path for 100 yards, that's where you lived. And it really threw me as well, because we say, you know, the amount of interviews that I've done, the amount of people that I speak to has a view. This is the first time that I've ever grew up on the same estate as somebody that I've been interviewed by or spoken to. So that really sort of took me back as well. And as I was saying, even your surname has deep relevance to my awakening. So it cannot be a coincidence, and that really took me back as well.
Absolutely astounding. And we're a few years apart in age, but we kind of know the same things. We study the same lines. We've got this deep connection with symbology and ancients and connecting with otherworldly beings, as I can put it. I've had a lot of interactions. You've had a lot of interactions round about the same places. And I'm just thinking there's a huge connection here, and a bigger thing that we don't know about yet. It will obviously unfold as it goes along. But can you tell me a little bit about you, Michael? What really kicked off this ascension of knowledge and this path for you?
Well, yeah, I mean, this path, really, I was kind of dragged into it, really. I as I say, I lived on a Midlands council estate. Nothing aristocracy about that. You know, there's nothing special about that. I was just brought up on a state, had secondary education, state education, and I joined the police force in my 20s. I did 17 years of a 30-year career, and
Wow.
I considered that my first marriage. And as I always say to people, you know, you don't enter into a marriage with the intention of getting divorced, but sometimes circumstances change and things happen. So I was a police officer for 17 years in London and Birmingham in the UK, so the two major cities of this country. And I saw lots and lots of things that people could only have nightmares about, really. But it learned me to investigate. It learned me to not go into anything with preconceived ideas, but to follow where the evidence takes you and piece that evidence together. And regardless of eyewitnesses that are telling you something at the scene, I'd always follow the evidence and take that where it took me. And I was considered an expert eyewitness in any court in the UK because of this profession. So probably towards 12 months before the end of my career, even though I didn't realise at the time it was going to be the end of my career, I was becoming very disillusioned within the public service, but at the same time, I was getting lots and lots of strange things beginning to happen to me.
Okay.
And that there wouldn't, a day wouldn't go by without some kind of experience. Now, people use the word paranormal or supernatural. When you understand it, it's really normal. But for want of better expressions, it was paranormal, it was supernatural. And I was seeing wormholes in the sky opening up dimensional gateways and seeing craft coming out of that wormhole. The wormhole would then dissipate and the craft would carry on across the sky. I'd be invited to certain places telepathically. I'd stood next to somebody who was not of this world. And there's so many different things that was going on, you know, balls of fire in the sky, that when I looked at the photograph that I'd taken, now I saw this, several other police officers saw it and paramedics saw it as well. And because we were fairly close to Birmingham Airport, I thought it was an airplane in distress. I thought it was an airplane on fire. That's how big the ball of fire was. Wow. And it did the same circuit twice. I took a photograph of it. The photograph bears no resemblance to what we saw with the naked eye. Literally a couple of weeks later, in the same region of sky, my police force helicopter was followed back to Birmingham Airport by a ball of fire. And they were refused landing permission until this ball of fire had actually gone. So and there's just so many different things going on. But the one thing that really ended my career as such was a young girl whose surname was Jensen. And that's why I said at the beginning that your name has real significance in my awakening. So this young girl, Sarah Jensen, she's a 14-year-old Victorian girl. And basically, she had asked us to look into her death. We didn't realise how long ago that death was. But on February the 9th, 2009, it was the 159th anniversary of the incident that took her life. Now, physically, I was in Birmingham. Conscious entanglement-wise, as in remote viewing, I was 159 years in the past in Victorian England.
Wow.
And I was taken back
in time. Are you saying you slipped back in time?
Yeah, I went back in time to her time event, which was 159 years previously. And I remember it vividly now. It was an old wooden bedroom. And as I'm looking from, I only imagine a bed, looking towards a small room, wooden. There were blue curtains and there was a door in the right-hand corner of the room. And as the door creaked open, the wind and the gust of that moved the curtains, and I can vividly remember that. And then I heard a young girl say, "He's here." That was the last moment of her life because she was suffocated and killed by her stepfather. So I actually witnessed the last moments of her life, and it traumatized me for 6 months to such an extent that I couldn't switch the light off when I went to bed at night. And my wife was next to me. She saw me just in absolute hysterics as if I was being attacked. Well, of course I was, because I was reliving her moments and she was being suffocated. And that really, for me, was the defining moment that made me consider everything. And I eventually, I never went back to my career again. And that really was the end of my career. But then things continued. And one of the last things that she said to us, what we didn't realize as well, is that for the build up to this, we had windows smashing in the house from the inside. I'd had attempted possessions of me. We'd have just eerie feelings in the house, but what we didn't realize, but we also had her assailant there as well.
Okay.
So we had her and we had her assailant.
So were you a bit like a portal that attracted spirits? Were they attracted to you? Do you think that they were attracted? Because I've heard this before. I think there's a show out there on US TV called 999 Paranormal, I think. And there's similar stories of paramedics or police officers, anybody in that line of fire where there's a murder or something that has happened and they've attached to the officer or the individual that's been there. Do you think something like this could have taken place with you? That
I think the very fact that myself and my wife were police officers, she naturally came to us because there's a history as well that where this young girl used to live in Victorian times was where my wife's childhood housing estate in Birmingham was built upon. So when my wife was a child and she used to have other children and her cousins who were children come over and they'd go up by themselves and play in the bedroom, there was one incident that she told me of that a young boy come down and said, "Can you go and tell that girl upstairs I don't want to play anymore?" And everyone just slacked jaw because there was no one else in the house. So wow. this young girl had been around pretty much all of my wife's life. Wow. And when she became an adult, then it still followed her. And when we got together, it then followed me as well. So that there's a bit of a history to this, and it was a nice conclusion. And one of the last things she said was, "Thank you, I'm sorry, and my favourite colours are pink and lilac." Now you think, I get the first two statements, but why are you telling me your favourite colour is pink and lilac? Well, we became to understand what that meant. A couple of days later, we'd been out for the day. We came back home and there was an artificial pink and lilac flower that had been left in the house for us. So this girl had come back and left a pink and lilac, yeah. And wow. I've still got that. And it was a pink and lilac artificial flower. So pink and lilac, it wasn't as it wasn't there before. The doors were locked. We'd been out. We came back. This pink and lilac flower had been left for us.
Astounding. So you've been an ex-police officer and you're having all these paranormal experiences. You've left the force. What happens next? How does the ET interaction start? What happened next for you?
Well, for me, I left in the middle of a deep recession where people were losing their jobs, and I walked out of a secure career. That's how much of an impact that these things were having on me. And the ET impact really just continued with lots of UFOs.
So sightings, did you see them? Did they come in your house? Did you have experiences with them in your home?
I have had experience with my home where they've shown me advanced technology, and I've seen advanced technology in my home. But I've seen lots and lots of UFOs, day, night, all kinds of shapes, cigar-shaped discs, teardrop shapes, literally every kind of shape you can imagine. I've seen them in daylight. I've seen them in the night skies. I've been privy to incidents where there's potentially been landings when I've been on night duty, and there was just so many things going on. I was getting messages in my head, and as I say, being invited with friends independently that we needed to go to a certain place at a certain time, just like the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind. But that happened. That really happened to me and my wife and two friends, all independently. And we went to this location. I was shown images the previous night that what I was going to be seeing. And when I look back at the photographs that we taken the night after, it was the exact replica of what I'd seen in my mind. So we were invited to this particular place. There's just so many things. What I class as my Rendlesham Forest. I went into a park, dense forestry, with a friend, with my wife. Now, it was such dense forestry. There's no roads there. There's no houses. It was just complete dense woods. And all of a sudden, in the middle of these woods, there was this beautiful, pure white light that just appeared amongst the trees. And it was so bright that I couldn't actually look into it. It was so bright. A little bit
like the Travis Walton in the bright light in the trees in the forest.
Yes, and it was like a Rendlesham Forest event, and it only lasted probably about 30 seconds or so. But it was just a beautiful white light in the trees, silent, nothing, just completely silent, and then it just disappeared. And it was complete blackness again, and it was so dark in this forest that you couldn't actually see in front of you, and yet we're having this beautiful white light that's just appearing. So it was literally just endless sightings, visitations, interactions of different kinds, and that really opened me up. And over the years, the way in which the communications have progressed has changed. So initially, it started off with sightings. We've seen things, we've experienced things, which I've now been told was because I had to experience it in order to understand it and then teach and talk about it. Yeah. So that was the reason that I was seeing so much, and I've been told why that was. But their method of communication now has become more and more and more advanced as the years have progressed. So to now, their method of communication is quantum equations. And I'm writing these quantum equations down because I know they are a series, they're a story. And it's taking me into angular velocity, it's taking me into X and Y, Z coordinates of algebra. And I think it's something to do with space travel. But I'm writing them down as they come in because it's sort of a journal. And it's also taking me expanding upon Einstein's E=mc² equation as well. It's actually expanding upon that. Some of the
quantum physics. We're talking quantum mathematics and interstellar and all that jazz. I was just about to say to you, just as you hit on it, that are you like me, that when you have an interaction, that not long after you go into like a bit of a silent state, and then you get downloads and floods of information that you just know, and you just don't know where this stuff is coming from.
Absolutely, but the downloads that I get are answers to cryptic puzzles, answers to ancient mysteries, answers to what these things are telling us and what they mean. And as a result of being in the center, sort of the hub of the wheel, when things are coming down the spokes, because you're at the center, you can make those connections in every direction, because they're all those connections are coming through you. Absolutely. So you're able to make and piece them things together.
So this deep esoteric knowledge that you've got, this has been given to you, I'm guessing, by you unlocking certain bits of knowledge and codes, because you are a code breaker.
Yes. What happened again, sort of, I think, around about 2009 again, I kept getting a golden key that I kept seeing in my mind. And it was like, well, what, a golden key? What does that mean? But when I looked into it, the golden key is the Gnostic right and entitlement to sacred Gnostic knowledge. So, and sometimes I've seen it on a church stained glass window where you see someone passing down a golden key, because that is passing down the knowledge. So a lot of this knowledge is for the initiates, you know, for the intuitive. Now, mystery when you look at the
and like a bit exactly. Like the Masonry mystery school,
it is. So it all comes from a lot of mystery schools where it's really just for the initiates. Now, when you look at the word intuition, it just means you are intuition, you are in teaching, and the soul is really the enlightened soul, which takes you into why the Great Pyramid shafts point to certain stars. It's talking about the enlightened soul being taken across the river of the sky by Nibiru, which is really the boat that is found in the Great Pyramid is the Nibiru, which in Greek mythology is the same as the river Styx and Charon, taking the enlightened souls to the duet. And the guardian of the duet is Apophis, which is Draco. And that is why you have the duet of Orion and Sirius, and you have Draco marked by the pyramid shafts. They're telling you about the enlightened soul passage through the river of the sky, which is the equivalent of the Greek river Styx. So all of these things came to me as a golden key, as a right to have this knowledge. And it really just progressed and progressed and progressed. And it's certainly been extremely enhanced, even in recent weeks. And it's getting more and more and more and more intense and more and more and more advanced, to now that I'm able to piece together every single man religion, every single ancient site of Earth, beyond Earth, to one singular message.
Wow. Astounding. Are you going to write a book about this, Michael? What are you doing with all this knowledge?
I do write it down. I'm writing something called the Serious Point at the moment, which talks heavily about Egypt, but it brings in other cultures as well. And when you look at these ancients were given us the key of to basically transport and transdimensional travel, getting out of here, really. And when you look at the likes of the Eye of Horus, and people say that is the pineal gland, yes, it is, but it's also a key to get out of the five, to get out of this realm, to get out of this reality. Because when man or woman comes down into this reality, the body becomes the cross. So when you have the two arms out and the legs, that becomes the cross. It is the cubical city. Now, if you concentrate on a divine mind, you will manifest the divine state, because within the cube is the pyramid. Now, if you concentrate on the five senses, on the material world, the cube, you will be the divine state and manifest. You will have the characteristics of the material realm. But if you don't, and you concentrate on the divine mind, then you will transform, and you will leave, or you can leave, the material realm. And that is exactly what the heads of Easter Island are telling us as well. Why is it that you only see the heads of Easter Island? Now, underneath the ground, these statues are 33 feet tall.
They're huge, yeah.
They're huge, but why can you only see the heads? Because they are telling you to concentrate on the divine mind, not the body of senses, which is the exact same thing.
The consciousness.
Yeah, exactly the same thing that the Eye of Horus is telling you. Now, if you break the Eye of Horus, the brow is where the three sacred rivers meet: the Ida, the Pingala, the Shishumna, which is given to you in the pictures of angels. So the wings of the Ida and Pingala, and the body of the Shishumna, which meets at the brow. So the brow of the Eye of Horus is wisdom. Now, when you look at the eye itself, Set ripped the Eye of Horus into 6 pieces. So the one part is the brow, which is wisdom. Now, when you look at the eye, obviously the pupil is sight. When you look at the part of the eye that is closest to the nose, it is smell. The part of the eye which is closest to the ear is hearing. You have the teardrop, which is touch, and you have the tongue-looking thing, which is taste. So in other words, you have the 5 senses. Now, how do you escape the 5 senses? Through the divine mind. And that is what the Eye of Horus is telling you at a deeper level than just a pineal gland.
To open the consciousness, open the pineal gland, and then consciousness will flood in and activate the Kundalini, and away we go.
Exactly.
We start to ascend our consciousness and
we do
explore.
And when you look at the Great Pyramid is a replica of the human mind. Now you find that where the king's chamber is the pineal gland, the queen's chamber is the pituitary gland, and you have that little tower, which is represented by the Shinto temple of Japan and China, but it is the jet pillar of Osiris, which is really it's Bethlehem. Bethlehem comes from Belen, which means the tree of fire. The tree of fire is the Kundalini fire going up the spine, to awaken the mind. So the subterranean chambers, what no one seems to know what they mean, represents the subconscious mind, and the chambers above, the king's chamber, the queen's chamber, represent the conscious mind. They are giving us a giant replica because it is the enlightened soul through initiation.
All this stuff, it's there, isn't it? It's there for us to access, to look at. It's there in plain sight, all over the globe for us to look at. I see it everywhere. Do you see it everywhere?
Everywhere you look. I walked past a church today, and it was like speaking a language with the church.
Yes.
Because it was just the bricks, just the rock. I went inside it and just looking at the pictures on the stained glass window, just looking at the red tint, the rose-coloured tint. Why is it red?
Colours, there's a lot of symbolic meanings in not only the shapes, there's the colours, how many colours were used and how they were situated. There's a whole deeper thing and meaning with this, isn't there? It's like a huge jigsaw puzzle. I love it. Yeah.
it is. And again, you got the altered state of perception, which is
Mm.
the rose-colored windows. You have all the geometrics, which is sonics, which is sacred sonics. You have every time you see a car logo or a brand name, that there is some kind of geometric message there. I mean, people think that the language of this world is, the likes of English, American English, Japanese, China. It's not. It's the language of codes. And if you wish to understand symbology, if you wish to understand the ancient sites, it is not in the ground. Archaeologists are not going to find the answers in the ground. They are written in stone. Now, Giza is really the Bible, and it marks the true birth date of Christ, which is not the 25th of December. But the Bible is the Giza Plateau. That's the original Bible, and all of the stories of the Bible can be found in the Giza Plateau. And this is the same. It is all there, the all-seeing eye, the all-knowing. It is the all-knowing, which is the skies. And they understood the movement of the stars. They understood the great years, the sidereal years. The prophets were the ones who could read the celestial narrative, the division of the heavens. And as a result of being able to understand the movement of the heavens, they were able to make certain predictions of what would happen in the future, because the stars take a programmed movement and certain things happen. So when you look at the whole of the Egyptian culture and the Sphinx and the pyramids, they mark the spirit of truth, which is what we know as the Christ. Now, the Sphinx watches the horizon. Now, on the 11th of September, you have the Virgo, the Virgin, who is clothed with the sun, with the moon at her feet. Now, the moon is in the sun is in the abdomen. It is the birth of the divine Christ in the Virgin. Now, this happens on the 11th of September, which is the true birth date of Christ. And the Sphinx and the pyramids mark this coming of the Messiah. So we have all of the same thing. Wherever I've gone, you can take, for argument's sake, you can take the pyramids and the Belen, the tree of fire. You can take that to Moses, the burning bush.
Yes, the burning bush. I was just going to say.
Yeah, it's the same thing. And Moses really to be born, which is a rebirth. So when you look at all of these things, it's talking about the conquest of self. Now, when you conquer yourself and you expand upon the Isis, the Aset, which means Seta, 6, the cubical city, you will transcend. And when you get this transcendation of the inner realm, yourself, you are then an enlightened soul that is taken on the Baut Nibiru, which is in the Egyptian pyramids, and you go through the duet. And that is what they're talking about, the enlightened soul. Now, you only become an enlightened soul by initiations, by being learned.
Astounding, Michael. Have you been in mystery schools? Because I know you've been approached by many out there to take part in certain organizations and other things. Have you been in mystery schools?
I'm a direct bloodline descendant of Queen Scotia of ancient Egypt. So Egypt is in my blood, literally.
Wow.
Now, if you are to believe past life, if you believe past life, then I was once a high priest in a mystery school of Egypt. Now, I can't sit here and prove that. That's the information that I was, and that was my life then. And ironically, it's sort of my life now, but in a more modern world. Okay. We've obviously other things going on, but my history goes back all the way to ancient Egypt. Some of the dream interpretations that I get to decipher take me back to ancient Egypt, and it's I've seen, as I say, strange writing in the blinds of my bedroom. I've woke up and seen, and this was in an awake state, and I've woke up and seen star maps in my bedroom to be told this is galaxies that have not been discovered yet. So there's so much going on, but the information that I have is, yes, I have at some point in the past been connected to or been an initiate of the mystery schools of Egypt, which then, of course, takes you into ancient Greece, because the Greek philosophers were mystery school initiates. It can then take you to the Kabbalah. You go through alchemy. You go through what becomes modern-day Christianity, is really a corruption of Egyptian theology. And we have all of these different places around the world that are all telling us and all giving us the key, really, to ascension.
This was part 1 with Dollie IndigoStar and Michael Feeley. Check out part 2 coming up. Don't forget to click like, subscribe and share. Thanks for watching.